Welcome to Science, Health and Healing Encyclopedia of Children's Health Core. I'm Dr. Majid Ali. The subject of this video is Number One Killer in the World, Part 2. If you have not watched Part 1, please do so. If your answer to this question, what is the number one killer in the world, is heart disease or stroke or kidney failure or diabetes or chronic anger or parasitic diseases or viral diseases, your answer is not correct. The correct answer is insulin toxicity. I also mentioned in part 1 that the great advantage of looking at insulin toxicity is it's not only the commonality in all the conditions that I mentioned, it can also be measured, it can be reduced, it is quantitative, it is objective, it is verifiable. Now for some people, this statement that insulin toxicity is the number one killer in the world would seem like a stretch. Let me explain. Insulin toxicity is created by toxicities of foods, environments, and thoughts, which lead to blockages of the cellular energy function. So you have buildup of cellular grease on the cell membranes, in the matrix, the glue that holds cells together, and in internal structures of the cells such as mitochondria, ribosomes. This grease is made up of rancid fats, tangled proteins, sticky sugars, cellular waste, and molecular debris. Now, once the grease builds up on the cell membranes, it jams the insulin receptor proteins embedded in the normally healthy fluid cell membrane. So at this level then, at first level, the number one killer is toxicity, foods and environments and thoughts. Number two, at the second level, it is the insulin receptor protein jamming because of cellular grease. At the third level, it is insulin toxicity. When insulin cannot work because the crank of insulin cannot turn the crankshaft of insulin toxicity, pancreas keeps producing more and more insulin to keep the blood sugar in the normal range. But it fails because the insulin is not working. Now, insulin toxicity directly damages the endocells lining the entire cardiovascular tree, which nurtures the entire body with oxygen, nutrients, and removes waste. It also interferes with cell membrane channels, calcium channel, potassium channel, magnesium channel, as well as receptors for, let's say, beta receptors or testosterone receptors, thyroid receptors, estrogen receptors. Now I mentioned that when you talk about toxicities of foods, environments, and thought, we understand that, but we need something to measure it. We need a matrix. We need a metric which is clearly understandable, which is quantitative, as I said, which is reproducible. Hence, it is scientific, it is verifiable, it is refutable. Now, the great advantage of clearly identifying insulin toxicity as the number one killer, of course, you might say that the oxygen deficit, wouldn't that be number one killer? The answer is yes, but there is no clear laboratory, easy to perform test which can demonstrate to you. What I'm trying to do at this encyclopedia is to challenge the dummification process of the television, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, C-SPAN, and all the so-called health experts in the world. They don't want you to understand the issues of insulin toxicity. They don't want you to understand the issues of the detergent and grease and detergent model of cellular disease and sickening. But once you understand insulin toxicity, then how do you diagnose it? Get your doctor to do simply 3-hour test. I have close to more than 70 videos on this title of insulin toxicity. In part A1, I said, please watch one entitled The 7 Stages of Insulin Toxicity. I also said, please watch Dr. Ali's plan for insulin reduction, insulin conservation. I would challenge anyone to explain to me that they understand any disease unless you can understand insulin toxicity. Let's say you have flu. Let's say you have influenza. Let's say you have strep infection. Let's say you have E. coli or number anything else. Remember, in all these epidemics, a small number of people become very sick and some people die, but majority of them recover from them very quickly and go on to live healthy, useful, productive lives. That's the question. What's the difference between those people who sicken and die and those people who can recover from these infections? And the answer is, it's the cellular energetics, which is number 1, a function of oxygen, and number 2, of insulin. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me.